Imagine spending your career, 30 years or more, defending criminals, or at least people accused of crime. Does it make you jaded, discouraged, or angry at injustice? Our two guests, both of whom qualify, will share with us their take on a lifetime of being a public defender as well as a private practice criminal defense lawyer. I'm Dick Goldberg, and welcome to this edition of Insights. With us is Denny Burke. He says it's a fact that he is the oldest living public defender in Wisconsin. He's been doing it for 42 years in Dane County in Madison, Wisconsin. He says he keeps a gun in his office that he got from a client that did a stick-up with it. And he said one of his idols is Eric Schulenburg. Eric is also with us. Eric was a public defender for 19 years and has spent many years since as a private practice attorney specializing in criminal defense. He's been a lawyer for 45 years. Can you tell us, why do you choose this line of work? Why do you want to be a criminal defense lawyer? Eric?
Why do I want to be now, or why did I want to be then?
Both.
At that point, I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer for the same reason I wanted to go to college and law school. So I didn't have to go to Vietnam, but that didn't work out so well in a sense. Nevertheless, it's a chance to have trials. It's a chance to speak for people who, in my opinion at least, are somewhat crushed by a powerful government.
And how about you?
You know, on my way over here, I passed some guys who were working outdoors in the cold, and I thought, you know, this job I've got isn't so bad. I have done physical labor. I have collected garbage for summers in Milwaukee. I think part of me found walking to a courtroom and back easy. I grew up in a family where people were treated with respect no matter how much money you made, what color you were. I was taught that people sometimes are treated differently because of their economic status or their color, and I found as a young lawyer working in a legal aid office that the law can actually work to help those people. And I liked it, and I've never stopped liking it.
Really?
Yep.
Never? Wonderful.
I mean, I didn't like, and Eric knows this story, I didn't like law school. Law school was about trusts and estates and property and real estate transactions. It's every time money changes hands in America, a lawyer has a piece of the action. And I never really cared much about money. I'm more interested in people's lives. And when I was in law school, I went and worked at a storefront legal aid office that Eric was working at. And I saw that the law can actually do good for people. It can enhance their lives. It can help them through tough times. You can affect people's lives, and that appealed to me.
Well, Denny, you have that gun from the stick-up guy.
Well, you know, that's an interesting. I'm not sure that gun is still there. The gun was dropped off about a week ago. I contacted a detective to come and pick it up. The detective showed up like 3 days ago, and I wasn't in the office, and our secretary wouldn't give it to him, so he's coming back to pick it up again. I'm not going to keep it for all times.
My point is,
it's evidence that I want to get rid of.
You defend some bad guys, right?
Many, many bad guys over the course of many years.
But
yes.
that seems very different and inconsistent with, justice for the people who are.
Let me tell you, and I grew up and I saw Patty Hearst being treated what I thought was differently than the people I represented, and it carried over to O.J. Simpson, and I hated a system of justice where only rich people were entitled to quality representation. That insulted me, and I thought that if you're poor in America, if you're accused of a crime, no matter how serious it is, whether it's shoplifting a six-pack of beer or a homicide charge, that if you were poor, if you were indigent, if you were mentally ill, if you were down and out, that you deserve to have somebody next to you who knew what they were doing.
Is that a ditto from you, Eric? Is that your motivation?
Very much. It's a
Yeah.
passion for what we do.
Do you like the process?
It depends on what you mean by the process.
Being a lawyer, there can be a good cause. I mean, you could say, I'm all for helping cancer and say, well, why don't you go roll bandages for 8 hours a day in a room by yourself? You might not enjoy the process, but you might like the cause.
The cause is wonderful. You speak about representing people who have done or are charged with doing terrible things and eventually are convicted of it. It's really that kind of case where the passion for the job is most intense. It's easy to represent someone who probably didn't do it. It's difficult to represent someone who's charged with a terrible, terrible crime because they're cloaked with the same rights that you and I have. Not to have their doors hammered down, not to have a confession whipped out of them, not to have people sneak around behind their back and make false promises to get them to confess. And it's easiest to whittle away at those rights when they're attached to someone who either is alleged to have done something terrible or is despicable or is lost or looks bad. It's easy to start to chisel away at those rights. So the defense of those rights is most important when it's connected to someone that no one likes.
Including you?
Everybody likes Schulenburg. What are you talking about?
No, I'm not saying they don't like you. I'm saying you don't like them.
Something about...
That's right.
I had one client in my career that I didn't like.
Wow.
In
I've had many more than that.
years.
Many more than that.
Many more than that. Let me just say the process, and I think Eric and I both enjoy the adversary process, the nature of practicing criminal law, confronting your accusers, cross-examining people, presenting defenses, confronting the government's authority and power. I mean, I think that underdog role appeals to people in this line of work, and it certainly does to me. I tell people, Anne Frank never had a public defender. I mean, when tyrants take over, they take away your rights. They take away your right to a lawyer, to a jury of your peers, to confront your accusers. And that process is a process that I've never given up on. I've never lost hope in.
So even if you don't like the person you're representing, you like the process?
I do like the process, yes.
How do you handle it? Eric, you said there's one person you didn't like. And
Yes.
you at liberty to tell us a little about that person?
Only that it wasn't all that serious a crime.
Oh.
We didn't mesh. For the 6 months I had him as a client, we just didn't get along.
You have to understand that Schulenburg is an unusual lawyer in that respect. I find myself accepting clients, accepting cases, and going about my business, and very often clients don't like me. I mean, a lawyer is in many respects similar to a doctor. You have to find one that you feel comfortable with. And some people want, especially in America, a lawyer with a sharkskin suit and a pinky ring on their hand. They think if you're any good at all, that you wouldn't be working in a public defender's office. They think in America you get nothing of quality for free. So I run into that prejudice all the time, and sometimes that wears on me, and people saying, you're not a real lawyer, or you're a public pretender. And I think, well, because there is such a enormous number of clients, if I'm not hitting it off with somebody, I feel very, very relaxed about saying, you know what, you need a second opinion, or you should try to find a different doctor who you like better than you like me.
Yeah. Why is it there's a lot of clients you don't like? Eric seems more accepting.
He's a sweeter guy than I am.
I just my standards are lower.
I mean, how does that affect your performance? If you really don't like this person, I say guy, I assume you defend women and men.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
By the way, what percentage of your clients are women?
14.
I was going to say a quarter.
Okay.
I made that up.
I'd say a quarter.
Yeah. Okay. So a substantial number.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how does that affect your performance if you really don't like this person?
Well, I've had clients say terrible things about me, and if they, I tell them, look, you and me have to be rowing in the same direction. We're in a canoe together. And if you throw your oar overboard and I'm doing the paddling, or I don't do my job, and we're not going to get where we need to go. So if somebody isn't holding up their end of the deal, or they think that I am letting them down, then I say, well, fine. I gave it my best shot. We'll get somebody else to try.
But does this affect how you behave?
Sure. I mean,
can you give it your all?
I think there have been occasions where I think to myself, it would be best, this client would be best served if he had another lawyer.
Okay.
Because I don't think that I'm willing, and I know what I have to do. I know what I have to say. I know what needs to be done. I don't think I can do it for this guy.
Okay, so you get a guy who comes in, and he did a terrible rape of somebody.
I got a guy told me.
Charged with it. He's charged with it.
Well, okay.
He didn't
I
do
got
it.
a guy who told me he was going to rape my wife. And I thought, you know what?
Yeah.
No, thanks. You know what?
Uh-huh.
I said, no, you're not going to rape my wife because you're going to prison for 90 years. And she'll be dead when you get out. But you know what? I don't appreciate you saying that stuff to me, so I can get you another lawyer.
That's good
So
reason.
I don't know what Eric
In other
says
words,
to
you
somebody
knew-
who says that,
Yeah.
but that kind of
You're human.
offended me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Understandably.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I don't stoop to conquer. I mean, I think there has to be an attorney-client relationship, and Eric, I think, is more generous with his time and with his emotions. I say, look, I am the lawyer.
Okay, so a guy comes to you, and he said, look, Eric, I did it, but I don't want to go to prison. I enjoyed it. It's the third woman I've done this to. And I've gotten away with it twice. Let's make it 3.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
I defend him. It's the state's job to convict him. If he's not convicted, it's because they didn't do their job well.
You know how bad this guy is.
You bet I do.
And you know it's very likely he'll do it again if he doesn't go to prison.
If he doesn't go to prison, he may do it again. But I can't go to the police or the prosecutor and say, hey, my guy did this. I think I'm not going to do my job. Why don't you just take him? That's not my role. He has a right to have someone make the other side prove that he did this crime. If they can.
And there's a witness who's going to testify against him, and he says to you, I know what I'm going to do about this witness.
In defending
That's
him,
different.
he's defending you. He's defending your family. He's defending this country. See, all of these rights that we're applying to these terrible people apply to us as well. I tell people when I pick a jury, I say, why do you think your grandfather splashed up on Omaha Beach? What do you think he was defending? What do you think that he was protecting? The Bill of Rights. What makes this country great? And the right to have the state prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and presumption of innocence. Those are the things that this country holds dear.
Wow.
We don't let the police decide who's going to go to prison. Police aren't going to come and take you away without Schulenburg or me saying, wait a second.
Yeah.
There's
Gosh,
motions
right.
to be, there's writs to be filed, there's due process here. So he's protecting you when he's protecting that terrible guy you described.
But when he said he's going to knock off a witness, what do you do?
That's different. Then he's telling me he's going to commit a crime. I can't allow that to go unreported. If I think he's going to commit a crime, the rules of ethics allow me to do something about it.
But he says, I like raping women. He doesn't say I'm going to kill a defendant. He says, I love raping women. I'm sorry, this is a little
Sure.
ridiculous, but he says that to you, and he said, boy, let me off because I want to do it again.
I'm not letting him off. If I don't defend him with passion, what chance does the innocent person have to a defense?
But you know he's likely to rape again, even tells
Let me tell you, that one of the things is we will not put him on the witness stand to lie. I mean, there are certain ethical obligations here and restrictions and requirements. We are not going to be, if he comes in and says, I raped that woman, I want you to get me off, well, that's fine. We'll see what we can do for you. But we're not going to put him on the witness stand and say, I was in Chicago at the time. There are certain limits to the advocacy that we employ.
Fine. And so the woman who was raped is on the stand. You're going to tear her apart if you can?
That's a bad way to put it.
It's never been my experience that tearing somebody apart benefits your defense.
Okay,
I mean,
I
neither
apologize,
Schulenburg
and
or
correct me.
there are lawyers who think that's the way you practice law.
But we've got a jury here, 12 people. And if I'm sitting in a lawyer's chair and I abuse a witness, I use my power to do that to a witness, I'm going to lose the case.
But what if you know she's had this old thing of how many partners have you had sexually in the past? And she has to say 21. And that'll bias the jury. What I mean, do you use that?
Those questions aren't allowed any longer.
Oh,
there's
not.
a rape shield law. There's a victims' rights are very pronounced now.
Okay.
So those days of dragging somebody's reputation through the mud is really kind of television or
Okay.
old-fashioned.
And that's where I got it.
Yeah,
so
that doesn't
just your
happen.
average
That doesn't
Joe.
happen anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm hearing is both of you, if you kind of the person's okay to deal with, they're not horrible to you, but you know they've done the crime, you have no problem because you've so carried the cause of the judicial system protecting people. You have no problem defending them.
I have a duty to defend them. There's a privilege between them and me that I can't reveal to anyone what they've told me. The same with you and your physician or your religious person, whoever that is. There's a privilege, and they can't say what you've told them. I can't, and I won't.
Let me tell you, in this business that I'm in, 95 out of 100 of my clients have done something inappropriate. Very often, my business comes down to what shall they be convicted of? Shall a 19-year-old kid be convicted of a felony for having a pocket full of cocaine, or should we give him a misdemeanor? Or this guy who has done something horrible and hurt his wife or hurt his children, what shall we do with him? So not every case is, I'm innocent, prove me guilty. The large portion of our job is negotiating for these people, trying to do the best we can to get them through this system without being harmed too badly.
What percentage of cases that come to you do you think are truly, totally innocent people?
2 in 100.
Innocent. That's a label that applies to someone just after birth. And they
Well, of
begin
the
to
crime.
accumulate guilt.
Of the crime.
So-
They're accused of a robbery and they had nothing to do with it,
That's uncommon.
Is it?
There's always something there. But
Really?
keep in mind that the
Well, that's not in the movies. In the movies, people are accused of a murder and they had nothing to do with it.
As I look out your window, I see our state capitol. The legislature sits there and creates crimes and penalties that are far in excess of something most human beings should ever have to shoulder. I've had a client who was looking at 40 years for taking a pack of gum.
Come on.
Sure.
Come on.
Because she was out on bail already for 3 different felonies. Each felony was a forged check in the amount of $25. And every time you're out on a felony, you get bail conditions. One bail condition is that you not commit another crime. If you do commit another crime or you're out on bail for that forgery, that's a felony bail jumping crime. So when she took a pack of gum, she had 3 different felony bail jumpings attached to her and was looking at 40 years.
What happened?
Now, admittedly, that didn't happen. But it shows that the legislature loves to heap
It
penalties
shows you
on
the
people.
strength of the gum lobby in America.
Absolutely. And you can't
Yeah.
microwave gum because it has cellophane around or tinfoil around it.
Well, let's talk about injustice. You have
we
probably
will.
seen a lot of what you perceive as injustice.
Well,
Yes.
what is justice is a very difficult term. I mean, everybody's notion as to what is justice is different. You walk into a courtroom, what the judge thinks is justice, what the DA thinks is, what the victim thinks, what the defendant thinks, what Schulenburg and I think. Everybody's got a different notion as to what's just. So when you walk out of a courtroom, maybe 1 out of those 5 or 6 consider that they've received justice.
The defendants, you mean? Or the...
No, I mean
Anyone.
the victim.
plaintiff.
Yeah, so when you say,
Wow.
let's talk injustice, well, you first have to figure out what is justice. And justice is, it's like, blowing in the wind. It's very difficult to get your hands on.
Well, let me get to another way of talking about this. What percentage of your clients are white?
Mine are, I'd say, 50.
That's pretty close.
Well, but yet, what percentage in prison system?
Oh. We have a far
I think
greater number of
there's a
people.
third of, I think that like about 30% of the prison population is white.
Okay. And here in this county, there's even a big disproportion of
Very much so.
minorities that are
Yep.
in the criminal justice system.
Very much.
How come you're not experiencing that as
Well, poverty and crime are brothers,
Mhm.
They coexist. And so I grew up in this Irish family in New York in the turn of the 20th century. On the Lower East Side, it was all Irish guys who were in trouble. It is the lower rung of our socioeconomic ladder where trouble lurks. Unemployment, poverty, illiteracy, mental health issues. And it just so happens that in America in 2014, Obama was on the radio yesterday talking about young black men in America. It's really a group that is most at risk in terms of being put in prison, convicted of a felony, not get a job. It's a huge national issue.
Okay, from where you sit, how much of that has to do with the fact they're poor, they've been persecuted and discriminated against all their lives, and how much of that is prejudice and profiling in the system making it even worse?
In part, it's the system's blindness to the effect that the laws have on those who are disadvantaged one way or another. I just had a case where my client has cash bail of $3,000 or $4,000. For most defendants, they could meet that and be out. I argued that the difference is that at the end of the 6 months he's sitting in jail, when there's a sentence imposed, I don't have any good record to show. He hasn't been out to get a job, to seek schooling, to go to counseling. Anyone who has money can do all that. So when they get to sentencing, they've got a good record to show the judge. My client, because he didn't have the money, has nothing to show the judge when he gets sentenced. That's poverty.
Yeah. How about when you're looking for a defense? You addressed this earlier. If your crime is drug deal, and let's say you're a pretty successful drug dealer and you have a lot of money, are you more likely to do better in court with an expensive private lawyer, despite what you had said earlier, than going to a public defender?
I think across the nation, yes. I think if you can afford a high-priced lawyer in L.A. or New York or Chicago or St. Louis, your odds of being successfully defended or getting through this process are better than if you have a public defender. I think it's not so much the case in Dane County, but across the nation, I think public defenders in the South and places are grossly overworked and underpaid and short on expert funds and all sorts of stuff. So I think looking at the country as a whole, if you have money, you make out better than if you don't.
And Eric, you switched from being a public defender to private practice.
I did.
That's for the big bucks?
The big bucks. It was the lure of the big bucks.
That's what I get. The switch was because I had a chance to form a law firm that is emotionally satisfactory for me.
He's working with his son.
Your son, yeah.
Yeah.
Schulenburg and father.
Schulenburg and father. Underdog law.
Uh-huh.
I was making a much better income as a public defender.
No kidding.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Well, why aren't you handling all these?
No kidding.
Why aren't you like?
That was before the governors, before the Republicans took over.
It was a.
Is this because you're a bad marketing guy, or?
No, we've decided how much we want to charge. We've decided how hard we want to work, and there's a lot of private practitioners in Madison.
Let me put it this way: Schulenburg is a soft touch. Okay.
Yeah.
A mother coming in and says, my son's been arrested on a burglary charge. Somebody else might say, I want $5,000 to walk across the street to appear for him. Schulenburg will walk across the street with far less than that.
Or sometimes nothing. Our office is downtown, so a lot of the homeless guys, when they get non-criminal charges, they end up at our door. One guy who got a $300 ticket because he left his bags on the sidewalk.
Oh, my gosh.
He had too many bags to carry at once. So he was carrying one set of bags and left the other set there, and he got a ticket for that. He doesn't have any money. His property's in the bags.
What do they do if you don't pay those tickets? What's the consequence? Realistically.
Right. It goes to a collection agency, and they're not going to get anything from these guys. But some of them try to pay anyway. They sell the Pulse on the street corners, and for $1 they get 75 cents, and they'll take some of that money and try to pay off the forfeitures imposed on them because of their lifestyle.
Oh my gosh! Tell me something from where you two sit, and all the years you've seen this system. What do people not know about criminal justice that you'd like to share?
They don't know that it's not like television. They don't realize a lot of the nuts and bolts of it. A kid is arrested for getting into a fight with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend calls up and says, I don't want to prosecute, and they don't realize that the girlfriend isn't calling the shots. They don't realize.
You mean the police can, or someone, the DA
district
can
attorney's
charge?
office, and once this thing is charged, it's no longer their case. I think they have a kind of a Hollywood version of how this system operates, and in real life, it's much, much different than that.
Okay.
Not nearly as dramatic, not nearly as glittery. It can be a very mean-spirited business. I mean, people get hurt in this business.
How?
They get locked up. They get their freedom taken
Well,
away from
but they
them.
do bad things.
Some of them do, some of them don't. Some get locked up for things that you and I would consider not so serious.
Give some examples, if you would.
How about having a second pot conviction, and it's a felony? How about doing
Just
time?
using
How about
one-
doing time for some weed?
Just personal use.
Where if you're in Washington or Denver right now, you what these people are doing would be completely legal now that you're looking at going to prison. I've got people who've got a pound of pot and they're getting locked up. You want
They're
people? You
dealing?
want people locked up for a pound of pot?
Are they dealing?
Yeah. Yeah, they're dealing, but not on schoolyards, not to infants, to people your age and my age. So I mean,
Some people might say
there
yes.
are people who, honest to God, who, if you went through the prison roster, the jail roster, who Schulenburg and myself and you would think this guy doesn't need to be there.
There's lots of them like that. And people go away for a lot longer than they should. The public thinks that long sentences are good things, and they're not. If someone has done something truly violent, I understand the need to keep them locked away from me and the people I care about. But there's lots of crimes people get locked up for a long time that don't require that. Being in jail is something you don't understand unless you've been there or you've had clients who've been there and tell you what it's like. It's an ugly place to be. And prison is even worse because you're there for a long time.
Well, wait a minute. Don't some people deserve to be there?
Sure,
A few do.
sure.
A few.
We can agree on
A
that.
few. A
Sure.
small. You're saying a small minority?
Most people are in there longer than they need to be for the prison or the jail to have the effect that we think it will have. If you go to, let's say you've forged some checks.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, that's a criminal prosecution that collects civil wrong done to someone who lost some money.
Mm-hmm.
And yet forgery is a felony, a serious felony.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to prison and sit in prison for 4 or 5 years for writing checks and putting someone else's name on it. Prison, if it's going to have any effect at all, it's beneficial, and that person has it in the first year. So they sit there for 4 more years I pay for that, and it doesn't do any good at all.
Just to play the devil's advocate, I've had in the last couple of months a couple people who I represented who went to prison, young kids, 19, 20, 21, come out after a year or two and tell me that it was the best thing that ever happened to them. They get into this, there's a boot camp program in prison, which is kind of like a basic training for the Marine Corps. There's a drug and alcohol program there. Some people, not a lot, but some people come out of the prison system better than they went in.
How about most?
Well, the problem is so many go in again and again and again. So you're not talking about first-timers. I mean, people are going in. I represent clients who are going in 4 or 5, 6 times. And, I mean,
Because
are they worse when they're coming out or going in? I mean, these guys are just chronic. It's like doing a life sentence on the installment plan, we call it, a little at a time.
Are they bad people?
No, they've given up on life.
I see.
Or they can't manage it anymore. If you're in prison long enough, When you get
Right.
out, everything is foreign.
You know, you had a statement, Eric, I wanted to kind of close on, and it was like, you sometimes wonder if you would do as well as some of your clients given their circumstances.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
Well, that's one reason I do this. I get some inspiration from almost everyone I represent. And I wonder, if I had grown up as they did, with nothing, with no one who cared about them, would I do as well as they do? I don't know that I would. I had every advantage. They say Mitt Romney was born on third base. Well, so was I, except for finances.
Yeah.
I had enormous advantages that they don't have.
You're in a courtroom. There's a district attorney who's been to college, who grew up in a family, an intact family, and the lawyers and the judges, and they are imposing their value system, what they expect out of their own kids, on these individuals who have had none of the advantages that Eric and I have had, and that's always, it strikes me as unfair.
With that, we'll let our listeners keep listening and thinking about this subject. That's a lot of food for thought. Eric Schulenburg and Denny Burke, thanks very much for sharing all this with us, and I hope you'll listen to the next edition of Insights. And remember, you can find all our podcasts at dickgoldbergradio.com or search for Dick Goldberg at iTunes or YouTube.